I was 12 when my dad said we were going fishing. It was spring, I think. Not quite summer, but the warmth was trying its best to make up for winter's absence. We lived on the edge of a nowhere town in Oregon, a place where the trees outnumbered people and secrets felt safe because nobody asked questions. I remember the morning light coming through the dusty blinds in our kitchen, the smell of burnt toast and gasoline on his jacket. He told me to pack light. "Just your essentials, bud. We'll be back tomorrow." I didn't question it. I never questioned him. He was the kind of dad who didn't say much, but when he did, it landed heavy. Every word came with a weight I didn't know how to carry yet. So when he said we were going fishing, I grabbed my denim backpack, shoved in a hoodie, my pocket knife, a pack of gum, and my Polaroid. That's all I had room for. That, and the tiny knot in my stomach I chose to ignore. We drove in silence. 45 minutes of winding roads and pine needles slapping the windshield. The truck smelled like cigarettes and old coffee. He kept checking the rearview mirror like he was expecting someone to follow. I noticed. I didn't ask. I should have asked. We reached the train station around noon. It wasn't the kind of place you'd expect to find in the middle of a forest. It looked older than time itself. Rusted signs. Cracked benches. A single rail that vanished into the trees like a secret path to nowhere. One platform. No schedule. Just a booth and a man inside who looked like he'd been there forever. Dad parked the truck but didn't turn off the engine. "Go inside. Get yourself a ticket," he said, eyes still on the tracks. "Tell the man your name. He'll take care of it." I laughed. "We're fishing, remember?" "Plans changed," he said, voice like a slammed door. I hesitated, the knot in my stomach twisting into something uglier. But I obeyed. Because I always obeyed. I stepped inside the station. The air was cool and smelled of dust and oil. The man behind the window was wiry, with eyes that didn't blink enough. He looked at me and nodded before I even spoke. "You're Eli," he said. "Got a bag?" "Yeah." He reached below the counter and handed me a paper ticket, brown, creased, with no destination. Just the time, 12:47 p.m. He paid in advance. "Said you'd be coming," the man added. "Train's almost here." I turned back toward the doors, already moving, already needing to see him, to ask him why. But by the time I stepped outside, the truck was gone. No tire marks. No engine fading into the distance. No trail of dust. Just the trees, and the humming rails, and that old station behind me. I stood there for minutes, maybe hours, holding a ticket to somewhere I didn't understand, waiting for a man who told me we'd be back tomorrow. I never saw my dad again. Not until last week. It was a Tuesday. I was at the library, flipping through a local newspaper from the archives, looking for old zoning records. My job's dull. City planning, maps, lines no one looks at unless someone wants to build a condo on top of a ghost. And then there it was. A photo. Small, black and white, halfway down the page. A piece on forgotten places in Oregon. Abandoned structures, roadside mysteries, old stations where trains no longer stop. There, in the frame, was the same station. And there, standing near the booth, like he never left, was my father. Same flannel shirt. Same hat. Same dead eyes. The caption said the photo was taken 2 months ago. I stared at it until the paper shook in my hands. I wanted to believe it was someone else, a trick of the light, a ghost of memory. But I knew that profile. I knew that silence. I went there the next morning. I don't know what I expected. Closure? Answers? Revenge? Instead, I found the station exactly as I remembered it. Timeless. Rotten at the edges but still standing, like some forgotten monument to every unanswered question in my life. And inside the booth was a man. The same man. Older, sure. But not by much. When he looked up at me, his face changed. "Eli," he said, just like before. "I was here years ago," I told him. "My dad left me. I need to know what happened." He paused. Then, like he'd been waiting all this time for someone to finally ask, he said, "I remember you. And I remember him." He looked past me, toward the trees. But he never left. I stood there, mouth dry, ticket still folded in my pocket after all these years. But he never left. The station attendant said again, his voice soft like wine through broken glass. "What do you mean, he never left?" I asked, though part of me didn't want the answer. "He dropped me off and disappeared. Gone. Vanished. He was gone." The man, still sitting in that booth like time had placed him there and forgot to let him out, didn't blink. "Not disappeared. Not gone. Just not where you were looking." I took a step closer to the booth. The glass between us looked thinner now, as if with the right words, it might dissolve. "You saw him? After that day?" "I see him every day." That stopped something in me. Froze it. Shattered the logic I'd wrapped myself in for over 2 decades. "Every day? I don't understand." "He left me here. You gave me the ticket." The man gave a slight nod, and for the first time, something like regret washed over his features. "I did." "You got on the train." "No. I didn't." I felt it rise in my throat now, anger maybe. Grief dressed up as rage. "I waited. I waited for hours. I didn't take the train." "You did take the train, Eli." "No, I stopped. Because something didn't add up. Something skipped. I remembered waiting. But then there was a blur. Then a stranger's face. A new town. A foster home with walls that smelled like bleach and soup from a can. I'd convinced myself I must have wandered off. Gotten picked up by someone. Told them what happened. But I couldn't recall telling anyone. I couldn't recall anything after that platform. "What train?" I asked quietly. "Where did it go?" The man's eyes flickered, not evasive, but cautious. Like someone standing on a frozen lake, knowing the wrong word could break the ice. "That depends," he said. "Some trains go forward. Some go back. Some go nowhere at all. Just keep you moving in place until you're ready to step off." I stared at him, my fists clenched, chest pounding with questions I didn't have the language for. "I need to see him." "You can't." "But you said he never left." "He didn't." "But you did." I stepped outside. The air had changed. There was mist now, low and crawling across the tracks like fingers. The trees were silent, their branches heavy, expectant. I stood at the edge of the platform where my younger self once waited with a bag and a lie about fishing. The rails hummed. I looked down and saw the faint shimmer of heat, or something like it. Not quite visible. More like a memory of light. In my hand, the old paper ticket pulsed once, so gently I might have thought I imagined it. I turned to go back inside, but the booth was empty. The man was gone. No doors creaked open. No footsteps faded away. Just gone. On the counter where he'd sat, a single object now lay, an old photo, curling at the edges, time-bitten. I picked it up. It was us. Me and Dad. I don't know who took it, maybe no one. We were standing right here, on this platform. He had his hand on my shoulder. I was smiling. But I don't remember that moment. I flipped it over. Written in fading pencil. Train 47. For the ones who aren't ready to leave. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't go home. I got a motel room nearby, the kind with a flickering vacancy sign and pillows that smell like damp plastic. I sat on the bed and stared at that photo until the shadows on the walls started to move like breathing things. By dawn, I knew what I had to do. I packed only the essentials, my phone, a notebook, the photo. I went back to the station. And there, waiting on the counter where the photo had been, was a fresh ticket. Brown paper. No destination. Just the time. 12:47 p.m. Same as before. Only now, beneath it, in a hand I hadn't seen in 23 years, were 3 words. "Come find me." There are moments you remember not because they're loud, but because everything else goes silent. That's what it felt like standing on that platform again, ticket in hand, staring down the tracks that had no beginning, no end, just a rusty line carved through the trees like something older than time. Something not meant to be followed. I didn't know what I was stepping into. I only knew it wasn't just a train. The air was heavy with fog and memory. It clung to my skin, settled in my lungs. I could smell pine, and engine oil, and something faintly sweet, like burned sugar. 12:47 was coming. I could feel it, not on my watch, but in my bones. Like something ancient turning over. Like the station itself was holding its breath. There were no signs. No timetable. Just the rhythmic hum of the rails and that cursed piece of paper in my hand, tugging at me like a leash made of unfinished grief. Then I heard it. Not a whistle. No, not like any train I'd ever known. It was softer, stranger. A low moan, mechanical and mournful. The air bent around it. The trees leaned back. Even the fog seemed to retreat. And then it appeared. Not suddenly, but as if it had always been there, waiting, and I was just now catching up to its existence. The train was black, dull metal streaked with soot, but beneath the grime was something pulsing, dim gold veins tracing along its surface, like it was alive, or remembering how to be. No logos. No numbers. Just a single door, already open, waiting for me. I stepped forward. My foot hit the platform wood and made no sound. I paused at the threshold. "Come find me," he had written. The last time I trusted his words, I ended up abandoned. Or rescued. I still wasn't sure. But here I was again. And I was tired of living in the echo of that day. So I stepped in. The inside of the train defied logic. The moment I crossed the threshold, everything changed. No rows of seats. No windows. Just a corridor that stretched in both directions, lit by low amber lights that seemed to dim the longer I stared at them. I turned. The door I entered through was gone. I wasn't on a train. I was inside something else. The air felt warmer now, but heavier, like I was underwater and just didn't know it yet. The walls were lined with framed photos. Black and white at first glance. But when I got closer, I saw that they moved. Not like video. Not like film. They breathed. A mother cradling a child, then setting it down, walking away. A boy sitting on a porch swing, always alone. A man shaving in a bathroom, eyes meeting mine through the mirror. Memories. Or ghosts of them. None were mine. But all of them felt familiar. Like borrowed pain. I walked. The corridor shifted with me. The floor curved underfoot, like the train was winding through space that didn't obey straight lines. Sometimes I thought I was walking uphill. Sometimes it felt like sinking. Then I found the next door. It was red. Wooden. The only thing in this place that looked handmade. And behind it, voices. I hesitated. Put my ear to the door. A laugh. Deep. Familiar. Then mine, smaller, higher. A child's laugh. My chest tightened. My hand reached for the knob. It opened on its own. It was the cabin. Oregon. Years ago. Our old fishing spot. Dad sat at the table, whittling something out of wood, a cigarette smoldering in the ashtray beside him. I was there too, curled up on the couch with a comic book, one sock half off my foot. I stepped inside. Neither of them, us, looked up. I wasn't in the memory. I was watching it. A ghost inside my own past. Dad said something. I forgot how soft his voice could be when he wasn't running. When he wasn't planning to disappear. "You know why we fish, Eli?" The boy version of me shook his head. "Because waiting teaches you things." He paused, shaving the edge of the wood. "Some things only show up when you're quiet long enough to hear him coming." I wanted to scream at him. Ask him why he didn't stay. Why he let me believe it was my fault. Why he never wrote. Never explained. But then he looked up. Not at the boy. At me. The real me. The one watching. His eyes locked onto mine through the glass of the moment, and everything froze. "You came back," he said. The younger me didn't flinch. Only I heard it. "You're not supposed to be here yet." The cabin began to fade. I stumbled back into the corridor. The door slammed shut behind me. I was sweating, shaking. I didn't know where the train was taking me. But it wasn't the past. Not really. It was something deeper. Something between. I kept walking. I didn't have a choice. And at the end of the next curve, another door waited. This one wasn't red. It was pale blue. Peeling. Familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. It was the door to my childhood home. The last door my dad ever opened for me. I reached for the knob. And the train lurched. Lights flared overhead. The walls groaned. And from somewhere deep inside, I heard his voice again. Not in a whisper, but in a scream. "Eli, don't open that door. Not yet. Not until you remember what really happened." I stood frozen in front of that pale blue door. The paint was chipped the exact same way I remembered, curling at the corners like dried skin. A rust-colored scratch beneath the knob, from the time Dad tried to open it with a bent key and a busted sense of timing. And that scream, his voice, desperate and real, still rang in my head. "Don't open that door." But I didn't move. Not forward. Not back. Just stood there while the corridor breathed around me. The train had stopped humming. The walls pulsed like lungs holding air. Somewhere behind me, I heard the echoes of my own name again. Quieter now. As if whatever had shouted it was farther away, or already fading. I knew what this was. A test. Or a trap. Maybe the same thing. But I was tired of walking through rooms full of ghosts, and watching them like a child with his nose pressed to glass. Tired of being told I wasn't ready, that the answers were just beyond me. So I reached out. My fingers curled around the knob. And I opened it. It wasn't the living room I expected. It wasn't my childhood home at all. It was the train station. Empty. Still. Except for one thing. My bag, the denim one I'd packed 23 years ago, was sitting right there on the bench, exactly where I'd left it. Untouched. Zipper half open. I walked toward it slowly, like it might vanish if I blinked. Inside, my hoodie, my knife, the pack of gum, melted into a single wad, and the Polaroid. I picked it up. It still had one photo left. But that wasn't the strangest part. The strangest part was the version of me already sitting on the bench. 12 years old. Dirt on his jeans. Fear in his eyes. Me. He looked at me, and this time, he really saw me. "Are you here to take me home?" he asked. My throat caught. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say of course. I wanted to gather that terrified boy in my arms and tell him that everything would be okay. That the worst was over. But I couldn't lie to him. Not anymore. "No," I whispered. "But I'm here to tell you the truth." His shoulders slumped, but he didn't cry. That was the thing about me, about him. We never cried when people expected us to. Only when the silence got too big to carry. "I waited," he said. "I know. You said we were going fishing." "I know," I said again, sitting beside him. "But he never planned to take you fishing." Silence. Then he looked up at me. His eyes were mine, but older somehow. Like the train had aged him differently. Like waiting had carved him into something deeper than time could understand. "Then why bring me here?" I swallowed hard. Because this was the question, wasn't it? Why did he take me to the station? Why pretend? Why lie? Why leave? I reached into the bag, pulled out the Polaroid, and aimed it at him. At myself. At the truth. The camera clicked. The photo whirred out. I didn't look at it yet. I let it develop slowly in my hand. "He thought he was protecting us," I said. "From himself. From something coming. Something he couldn't stop." The boy frowned. "Like what?" And that's when the door across the station opened. And he walked in. Dad. Not in a memory this time. Not through glass. Here. Now. He looked older. Grayer. But he walked with that same half-limp from the time he fell off the roof fixing the gutter. Same heavy boots. Same leather jacket with the tear under the arm. When he saw us, me, both of me, he stopped. Stared. Then, slowly stepped forward. Eli, he said. And somehow, we both answered. Me and the boy. The man who left us stood just feet away now. Not a ghost. Not a flicker of the past. Real. I didn't know if the train would let you find me, he said. You got further than most. What is this place? I asked. His eyes softened. Somewhere between goodbye and forgiveness. I stepped forward. You lied to me. I did. You left me. I did. My fists clenched. Why? He looked over at the younger me. The boy still sitting on the bench. Still waiting. There are things in this world that don't let you leave clean, he said. Things you carry. Curses. Regrets. I had one. You could have told me. You were a kid, he said, voice cracking. And I was a coward. We stood in silence for a long time. Then he reached into his coat and pulled something out. A train ticket. Same brown paper. Same 1247. But this one had his name on it. I never took the train, he said. I stayed. I couldn't leave until you did. Until you were ready. I looked down at my hand. The Polaroid had finished developing. But it wasn't just the boy on the bench. It was all three of us. Me, my younger self, and my father. And we were all looking in the same direction. Toward the tracks. Where the next train was already coming. The train was coming. I could hear it before I saw it, just like before. But this time, the sound was different. Not mournful. Not mechanical. It was low, like thunder buried in a heartbeat. Rhythmic, alive. It didn't hum. It called. And something inside me answered. My younger self stood now, Polaroid still in his hands, studying the image like it might explain the years we lost. His brow furrowed in that familiar way, the way I used to stare at test questions I didn't understand but refused to leave blank. Dad didn't move. He held his ticket out in front of him like it might dissolve if he held it too tight. Is that it? I asked. The train you didn't take? He nodded once. I came back every day for a while. Then every week. Then less. He looked at the tracks. Always the same. The station never changed. But I did. And now? Now it's time. The three of us stood there, years stacked like shadows on the platform. The boy was quiet, but I could feel him watching us both. I wanted to protect him still. Even though I was him. Even though he would become me. Or maybe he wouldn't. Maybe that's what all of this meant. Dad looked at me. I didn't know what the train was when I left you here. I just knew I couldn't stay. I thought it would fix something. I thought you would forget. I never did, I said. My voice didn't break. It broke through. I know that now, he said. It doesn't work like that. Not here. He turned to the younger me. I'm sorry, he said. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The boy blinked slowly, as if the word took time to reach him. Then he said something I wasn't expecting. Are you coming back? My father smiled, and in that second he looked like the man I remembered, on the good days. The ones I tried to hold on to longer than they were ever meant to last. I think that's what this is, he said. Coming back. The train appeared from the fog, no headlights, no screeching brakes. Just presence. A deep, ancient knowing sliding into place like it had been arriving forever. The door opened with a hiss. A golden light leaked out. Not blinding. Warm. Like the glow behind closed eyelids. Dad looked at me. Do you want to know what I saw on the other side of that first door? He asked. I nodded. I saw the moment before I left, he said. You were asleep in the truck. I was sitting outside the station, ticket already in my hand. The sun was rising behind the trees, and I almost woke you up. Almost said we could still go fishing. That we didn't have to do this. Why didn't you? He looked down. I was afraid the worst parts of me would follow us anyway. That it was better for you to hate me than to inherit me. The train let out a soft, low tone. Not a horn. A breath. Dad stepped closer to the edge. I know I can't make it right, he said. But maybe I can stop running. He reached into his coat and handed me something. A small piece of wood. Whittled. Smooth at the edges. A fish carved by hand. Still owed you a souvenir, he said. I took it. The weight was more than its size. I don't forgive you, I said. I know. But I think I can learn how. He smiled again, and it wasn't sad this time. It was free. Then he turned, stepped onto the train, and the door closed behind him. The train didn't move the way you'd expect. There was no lurch. No rattle. It simply wasn't there anymore. One blink. Gone. The air settled. The fog drew back like curtains pulled open. The platform was quiet. Just me. And the boy. He sat back down on the bench and stared at his shoes. I don't want to grow up, he said. You already did, I said gently. He looked up. Did we turn out okay? I thought about it. About the years I spent not talking about him. About the way I flinched every time someone mentioned their father. The way I couldn't say goodbye without swallowing something sharp. The broken relationships. The therapy I ghosted. The questions I never learned how to ask. But also the way I survived. The way I showed up anyway. And the fact that I was here, now, staring down a wound that once defined me. We're still learning, I said. But we're not alone anymore. He smiled then, small, sad, honest. I reached out and took his hand. And just like that, he faded. Not disappeared. Not vanished. Just released. Like he had never been lost, just waiting for me to return. I was alone on the platform now. But the word didn't feel so heavy anymore. I stood, took the last train ticket from my pocket, the one I found yesterday, and held it in my palm. The ink shimmered. 12:47 p.m. There was no train this time. Just a door. A new one. Right there, where the tracks once lay. Painted black. Handle silver. Waiting. The door didn't belong. Not to a station, not to a train. It looked more like it had been borrowed from an old farmhouse, or pulled from the front of a house I only visited in dreams. A door you recognize in your bones, even if you've never touched it. Something ancestral. It stood right there, freestanding at the end of the platform where the tracks had vanished. No hinges. No frame. Just the black wood and silver handle, casting a shadow even though there was no sun. I held my breath. Then I walked to it. You ask yourself 100 questions in moments like this. What's behind it? Is this death? Is it rebirth? Am I walking away from the life I've built, or toward the truth I buried? But the biggest question wasn't about the door. It was about me. Who had I become, after the waiting, the wounds, the wanting? And who was I, if I didn't carry the story of the boy left on the bench anymore? That boy was gone now. Or maybe he was finally home. I touched the handle. It was cold, but not lifeless. It felt like something watching me from the other side. Not with eyes. With memory. The ticket in my hand burned faintly. I looked down. The ink was fading. 12:47 p.m. Then 12:48 p.m. Then gone. I opened the door and stepped into light. It wasn't heaven. It wasn't anything. And then it was everything. There was a room. Circular. Wide. White walls that pulsed like breath, like sky, like fog. No furniture. Just moments. Projected. Spinning slowly around me. They weren't memories exactly, not just mine. They were versions. Echoes of timelines that never happened. Glimpses of the what if. There I was, older, laughing, hand in hand with someone I didn't recognize. There I was, drinking, alone, staring at a TV that played nothing. There I was, at the station again, but leaving instead of being left. There I was, holding a child. My own, maybe? Or maybe just hope in smaller form. Each version played for a few seconds, then faded. I turned slowly in the center of the room, hands loose at my sides. I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. This wasn't judgment. This wasn't punishment. This was offering. The chance to choose. Then I heard his voice again. Not behind me. Within me. Some doors open backwards. Some forward. Some only open when you stop trying to fix the past. I closed my eyes. Let the room spin around me. Let go of the versions I'd never be. Let go of the stories I didn't get to finish. Let go of the man I thought he was supposed to be. When I opened my eyes, the room was gone. I was standing on a road. 2-lane blacktop. Mountains in the distance. The smell of dust and pine. The door behind me disappeared like breath on glass. No train in sight. Just a path. And the fish carving still in my hand. I walked. Not toward anything. Not away from anything. Just forward. I don't know how long I walked. Time didn't seem to matter here. Eventually, I saw a shape on the side of the road. A small structure. Simple. Wooden. Like a hunting shack, or an old ranger post. Smoke curling from a chimney. I approached slowly. Knocked once. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, a single room. One chair. A small fire. A window that opened onto nothing. And on the table, an envelope. With my name on it. In his handwriting. I sat. My hands trembled. I opened the envelope. Inside, a letter. Yellowed. Folded 3 times. And a photograph. The one from the train station. But this time, it was just him. Standing in front of the booth. Alone. The letter read, Eli. If you're reading this, you made it further than I ever did. I don't know what you saw. I don't know what you chose. But if you've come this far, you've earned the one thing I never gave you. The whole truth. There's a room in the woods. The key is the memory you've buried the deepest. When you're ready to open it, you'll remember. Dad. I read the letter 3 times. Then I sat there until the fire died. Until the sun began to rise outside the window that opened onto nothing. Until I knew what memory he meant. There's a forest near the edge of where my childhood ended. It isn't marked on any map. Not really. But I've seen it in dreams. I remembered the letter. The promise. A room in the woods. And the key? A memory I buried the deepest. I left the shack just after dawn. The road behind me vanished the moment I stepped into the tree line. No path. No signs. Just a hush that felt older than language. I walked slowly, each footfall muffled by moss and memory. Birdsong flitted through the branches like questions I didn't know how to answer. The deeper I went, the heavier the silence became. Not oppressive, just waiting. Like the trees were listening. Like they knew. It came back in pieces. The memory. Not all at once. Like light through leaves. Flickering. Shy. I was 6. Too small to know what I saw. Old enough to feel it carve into me. It was a Sunday. The sound of glass breaking. My mother's voice raised. His voice louder. Me, hiding behind the washing machine. My hands over my ears, but it didn't help. Nothing helped. Then, his shadow at the door. Towering. Shaking. I remembered the silence that followed. How it felt like a wound instead of peace. The next morning, he took me fishing. Tell no one what happened. He said that to me as we drove. I nodded. Because that's what I was taught to do. Be quiet. Be still. Forget. I stopped walking. Because the trees had opened. There it was. The room. Not a cabin. Not a shack. Just 4 walls and a door. No roof. Built from the same pale blue wood as the door from the train. It pulsed with something I couldn't name. I stepped closer. The closer I got, the more that memory, the one with the broken glass, the silence, the shadow, burned in my chest. The key, I realized, wasn't a thing. It was acceptance. Not remembering. Not understanding. But letting it be real. I stood in front of the door. My hand didn't tremble this time. I placed it flat against the surface. Spoke aloud the truth I had swallowed whole for years. He wasn't just absent. He was angry. He wasn't just flawed. He was afraid. He hurt us. And I loved him anyway. The door opened. Inside, a single chair facing a mirror. No tricks. No riddles. Just a mirror. And in it me. Not younger. Not older. Just true. I walked in. Saturday. Faced myself. And finally saw the whole story. All of it. The good days. The fishing trips. The way he tucked me in, even on the nights he drank too much. The bad days. The ones I learned to forget. The silence after the leaving. The ache that became my shadow. I saw him. I saw me. And I saw the space between us. Not a wound anymore. But a door. There was one final object on the floor beneath the mirror. A tape recorder. Old. Heavy. I pressed play. My father's voice came through, cracked and tired. Eli. If this message reaches you, I need you to know something. I ran because I thought it would save you. I stayed gone because I was too ashamed to see the damage I'd done. But you survived. I know that now. And if you're listening to this, you did something I never could. You came back. You faced it. You forgave. Maybe not me, but yourself. That's what matters. That's the real legacy. Not pain, but choice. The tape clicked off. I didn't cry. I just sat there, feeling something lift. Not leave. Just lighten. Like grief exhaling. I stepped out of the room. The forest had changed. Sunlight filtered through gold leaves. The hush was gone. Now there was birdsong, and wind, and breath. I walked until I reached a clearing. There, in the center, was a bench. Wooden. Familiar. Like the one from the station. I sat. And waited. Not for him. Not for a train. But for me. The me that could go on. The me that had finally arrived. The clearing was quiet. But not hollow. There was life here. The kind that doesn't shout. Wind moving through tall grass. The creak of old trees stretching. The steady rhythm of breath in my chest, my own, and somehow more than my own. I sat on the bench and let the stillness settle. Not the kind of stillness that follows absence. The kind that follows understanding. I thought of the train again. How it came for him. Not with vengeance, but with mercy. How it waited. How he waited. I don't know what happened to him after he stepped on. I don't think I need to. Maybe he's still riding, through places I'll never see. Maybe he's gone in the way that matters least. His body, his face, his voice. What stayed is what I carry now. The apology. The fear. The small, flickering attempt at redemption. And what I choose to do with it. That's the rest of the story. The bench beneath me was smooth, carved from a single piece of wood. There were initials scratched into the side. E+? Childhood graffiti, maybe. Or a question someone else left behind. I let my fingers trace the grooves. I wasn't thinking about revenge anymore. Or justice. Or even closure. Those were too sharp for what this was. This was something older. Softer. Like picking up the pieces not to rebuild what was, but to finally let go of carrying them. I stood up and looked around the clearing one last time. I didn't need to stay here. But I wasn't rushing to leave. Somewhere out there, beyond the forest, beyond the door that vanished behind me, was my life. my real one. Not a ghost trail of what might have been. Not the orphan timeline I'd carried since age 12. Just the present. Mine. I found the road again by instinct more than sight. It curved out of the woods like a ribbon dropped by something kind. The Polaroid was still in my pocket. I looked at it one last time. Dad at the station. A crooked smile. A posture that said, "I'm still trying." I folded it. Placed it gently inside the wooden fish he carved. There was a hollow there I hadn't noticed before. A space meant for remembrance, not worship. I closed it and kept walking. I didn't feel lost anymore. Not because I had answers, but because I finally stopped needing them to move forward. The boy who waited at the station wasn't waiting anymore. The man who left him didn't have to be chased. I wasn't walking away from them. I was walking with them. In the only direction we ever truly have. Ahead, in the soft bend of the road, I saw something strange. A bus stop. Just a post. A sign. A bench. The kind you'd find on the edge of a small town. A woman sat there, reading. She looked up and smiled. "You're late," she said kindly. "Story of my life," I replied. She nodded to the space beside her. "Still room?" I sat down. And waited. This time, not for a train. Not for him. Not for closure. But for what comes next. The bus stop bench was warm. The woman beside me didn't speak again, not right away. She turned her page, a slight smile on her lips like she already knew the ending. Or maybe just didn't need one. I looked down the road. There was no bus in sight. But I didn't need to see it to believe it was coming. Not anymore. The trees on either side of the road leaned inward, branches arched like cathedral ceilings. Light spilled through the leaves in long ribbons, painting the pavement gold. It reminded me of mornings in Oregon before everything got complicated. Before fishing trips became goodbyes. Before promises folded themselves into lies too quiet to scream at. I used to think grief was about holding on. Now I see, it's about carrying forward. The woman closed her book gently. "Is this your stop?" she asked. "I'm not sure," I said. She smiled again. "Most people aren't." She stood, brushed the leaves from her coat, and walked down a path I hadn't noticed before, a dirt trail disappearing into tall grass and dandelions gone to seed. She didn't look back. Some goodbyes don't need ceremony. Some just need release. I waited a while longer, not watching for the bus, just listening. To the wind, to my breathing, to the sound of things I hadn't made peace with, being quiet for the first time in years. Then, softly, a rumble on the horizon. Rubber on road. Headlights cresting a low hill. A city bus. Yellowed windows. Worn paint. No number. Just one word on the front panel. Return. I stood as it pulled up. The door hissed open. The driver was an old man with a kind face and eyes that had seen too much and forgotten just enough. He didn't ask where I was going. He just nodded. I stepped on, heart steady. Only a few passengers inside. No one spoke. I found a window seat. The engine hummed like an old song. And we began to move. We passed memories that weren't mine. Children playing under pink skies. A teenager skateboarding along the guardrail of a highway that no longer existed. Two people dancing in the middle of a grocery store aisle like no one had told them joy had rules. I watched, not with envy, but with reverence. Somewhere in that blur of passing moments, I saw him again. My father. Standing on a hill. No station. No train. Just him. Watching me leave. He didn't wave. He didn't need to. I nodded. That was enough. At some point I must have dozed off. When I opened my eyes, we were crossing a bridge. The kind of bridge that seems to stretch forever. Beneath us, water dark and still. Above us, sky fading from orange to deep violet. I checked my pocket. The ticket was gone. But in its place was the fish carving. Whole. Smooth. still warm from my hand. The bus slowed. A gentle halt. I looked out the window. Recognized nothing. Recognized everything. The driver turned to me. "This is where you get off." "How do you know?" He smiled. "Because you're ready to stop waiting." I stepped off the bus. Not into the past. Not into the future. But into the now. A small town. A coffee shop. A bookstore. A streetlight just flickering on. A couple laughing too loudly in a booth by the window. No signs. No symbols. No mystical doors. Just life. Ordinary. Uncertain. Beautiful. I walked into the cafe, ordered black coffee. Sat near the window, watching the world carry on. No one knew what I'd just been through. No one needed to. Because the ache had a name now. And I wasn't trying to outrun it anymore. I reached into my pocket. Ran my thumb across the smooth edge of the carving. Whispered not out loud, but loud enough. "I forgive you." And maybe I meant him. Maybe I meant myself. Maybe both. I sat at the cafe window for what could have been hours. The coffee grew cold, untouched. Outside, the world moved in small ways, cars passing, strangers meeting, dogs tugging their leashes towards something just out of reach. Ordinary life. Beautiful, because it didn't know I had just come back from something most people wouldn't believe. Because it didn't need to know. I think that's the trick no one tells you about healing. It's not loud. It doesn't come with fanfare or fireworks. It arrives like this. Quiet. Subtle. You look up one day and realize you're not carrying it the same way anymore. That the ache is still there, but it fits in your chest now, not your throat. That the questions still echo, but they no longer drown out your own voice. I left the cafe. Walked. No destination. Just movement. That's what I'd learned to trust. Not answers. Not clarity. But the courage to keep walking. I passed a playground. A bookstore. A bench that reminded me of the one from the station, but newer, waiting for someone else's story. I pulled the wooden fish from my pocket. Held it in my hand like a compass. It was still warm. Not from magic. From memory. From the fact that it had always belonged with me, even before he gave it to me. I walked until I reached a small hill. No signs, no names. Just a slope of green overlooking a quiet stretch of town. I sat. Not because I needed to rest, but because I wanted to arrive. I took out a pen and my old notebook. The one I'd been carrying since the train. I flipped to a blank page. Wrote. He left me at the station. But I didn't stay. I followed. I searched. I forgave. Then, after a moment, I added. And I returned. Below me, someone called out to a child. Laughter followed. No ghosts. No trains. Just life. Simple. Sacred. Whole. I stood. Held the fish one last time. Then placed it at the base of the tree on the hill. Not as an offering. Not as surrender. As acknowledgement. It was his once. But the story? That's mine. I walked back down the hill with nothing in my hands. And everything in my heart. The wind moved through the grass behind me. And somewhere, far off, in a place I no longer needed to chase, a train passed through the trees. Not coming. Not going. Just continuing.